Okay, I need to tell you something that might make you a little angry. For years, you've probably downloaded language learning apps, memorized 1,000, maybe even 2,000 vocabulary words, made flashcards that pile up like a mountain in your room, ground through quizzes every night before bed, and still, the moment you meet a native speaker who wants to talk, you freeze. Your brain goes completely blank. All those words you memorized so hard, the ones you were sure had stuck, don't come out of your mouth at all. You start sweating. You give an awkward smile. You say sorry, my target language isn't good, even though your phone has hard proof, 1,500 words mastered, every checkbox green in the app. So why does it feel like you don't know anything? I want to tell you something right now, this is not your fault. It's the method's fault. And it's not just you. This is a mistake millions of people around the world make while learning a foreign language, because school systems and most apps teach us a way that's been scientifically proven to be ineffective at making you actually speak. In this video, I'm going to break down one trick that only takes 5 minutes a day, nothing more. That got me speaking a foreign language more fluently within weeks, compared to a friend of mine who memorized 1,000 words for an entire year and was still nervous and stumbling every time he had to actually speak. This isn't empty clickbait writing on a title alone. I'm going to give you an explanation of why the old method fails, backed by science. The exact step-by-step process for this 5-minute trick. The fatal mistakes that make people fail even after trying the trick. Real case studies from people who've proven this works. And in the final minutes of this video, I'll give you an advanced variation that's even more powerful, one that's rarely discussed anywhere else. But before I break down the trick in detail, I want you to understand deeply, right down to the root, why the old method, memorizing thousands of words, is actually a trap from the very start. Because once you understand the root of the problem, this trick will make far more sense to you, and you won't give up halfway through like most people do. Oh, one more thing before we start, if you watch this video all the way to minute 20, you'll understand why the people you think of as naturally gifted at languages are actually just doing one simple thing differently from everyone else. And it has nothing to do with talent at all. Okay, let's get into it. Why memorizing 1,000 words is a trap. Picture this. You have 1,000 high-quality bricks, neatly stacked in a warehouse, painted, even sorted by color. But you have no mold, no cement, and most importantly, you have no idea how to arrange those bricks into a standing house. That's exactly what happens when you memorize vocabulary in isolation, with no context. A word is like a brick. But language isn't a pile of bricks, language is a whole building. And what makes the building stand isn't the number of bricks, it's the pattern of how those bricks are arranged, bonded together, and used in real time. In linguistics, there's an important distinction between two types of knowledge. The first is called declarative knowledge, knowledge about facts, like the meaning of a word or a grammar rule. The second is called procedural knowledge, the ability to do something automatically, without needing to think step by step. When you memorize that the word machen means eat, that goes into declarative knowledge. It's like knowing a math formula in your notebook, but not necessarily being able to solve the problem quickly under exam pressure. Speaking a foreign language naturally requires procedural knowledge and automatic, reflexive ability that just comes out without you having to think first. Oh, what does this word mean? What's the grammar rule here? What's the word order? Which tense should I use? If you're still thinking through all of that one piece at a time while speaking, that means your brain is still operating at the declarative level, and this process is slow, makes you look nervous and choppy, and worst of all, it's easy to forget and completely blank out the moment there's social pressure, like talking directly to a stranger. That's why so many people who actually have high IQs, strong memories, and can even score perfectly on a written vocabulary test, still completely blank out, sweat, and can only give an awkward smile the moment they have to talk to a native speaker. Not because they're unintelligent or untalented, but because they've been training the wrong system this whole time. This is something I experienced myself, and I want to tell you the full story so you can relate. I once downloaded a popular flashcard app and set myself a goal of memorizing 50 new words a day, without fail. I was extremely disciplined. Waking up early, opening the app, doing every single review, sometimes even doing it in the bathroom, on public transit, anywhere. Within a month, according to the app's statistics, I had mastered 1,500 words. The progress bar was all green. I felt so proud, like I was one step closer to fluency. Then one day, a foreign tourist got lost near my house, and asked me for directions in the language I was learning. It was supposed to be a golden opportunity to practice. What happened instead? I froze like a statue. My brain just seemed to short-circuit. The words I had memorized were in my head. I could feel myself searching through a messy bookshelf in there, but I couldn't pull them out fast enough to actually speak in real time. In the end, I just pointed with my hands while mumbling a mix of my native language and broken English. The tourist walked away confused, and I went home with a mix of embarrassment and total confusion about how this could have happened. That was the most embarrassing yet most important moment in my entire language learning journey. Because from that point on, I became obsessed with figuring out why this happens, and how people who are genuinely fluent learn in a completely different way than what I'd been doing all along. The discovery that changed everything. I started digging into academic research on second language acquisition, the process of how the human brain learns a second language. I read journals, watched lectures from linguistics researchers, read books on the neuroscience of language. And I found one concept that kept coming up again and again across almost every source. A concept called comprehensible input, plus one practical technique derived from it that anyone can practice, anytime, anywhere, with just 5 minutes a day. But before I break down the trick in detail, I want you to notice something fascinating. Something that became the turning point in my thinking. Think about it, how do young children learn their native language? No toddler sits quietly making flashcards. No baby does vocabulary quizzes on an app. Yet within 3 to 4 years, they're already chatting fluently, forming complex sentences, and even understanding humor, sarcasm, and emotional nuance in that language. How can they do it that fast, when their brains aren't even fully developed yet? The answer: they don't learn words one by one in isolation. They are constantly bombarded with repeating language patterns, in real context, with intonation and emotion attached directly to meaning. When a mother says let's eat while feeding her child, the child's brain doesn't just store the word eat as an abstract dictionary entry, it stores it together with the motion of the spoon, the feeling of hunger, the mother's voice, her facial expression, all as one complete experiential package. Their brains absorb patterns in context, not isolated word lists. Now, adults actually have that same biological capacity to learn this way. We've just forgotten how, because school systems and most language apps teach us language like solving math problems, memorize grammar rules, memorize vocabulary lists, fill in worksheets, take weekly tests. We're forced to learn language using an approach that's actually the opposite of how the human brain naturally absorbs it. From this point, I started experimenting on my own with various alternative methods. I tried full immersion, meaning I switched all my phone and app settings to the target language. I tried watching films with no subtitles at all, even though it was incredibly frustrating at first because I didn't understand anything. I tried reading books above my level, forcing myself to understand from context. I even forced myself to talk to native speakers via language exchange apps, despite being nervous as hell and making embarrassing mistakes constantly. Every one of those methods had its own benefits, and I'm not going to say they were a waste of time. But the problem was, all of them required hours a day, which honestly, not everyone has, especially people with full-time jobs or other responsibilities. Then, in the middle of that search, I found one specific technique, one that at first seemed too simple to be believable, and honestly, I was skeptical myself. That only takes 5 minutes a day, but whose effect, from my own personal experience, was far stronger and showed results far faster than a full hour of flashcard memorization. The name of the technique, shadowing with a microloop. Sounds technical and unfamiliar, right? Don't worry, I'm going to explain it as simply and thoroughly as possible, step by step, and once you hear the explanation, you'll understand why this works so much better than the old method you've been using. What shadowing is, and why it's different from what you think. Shadowing actually isn't a new technique. It's an old technique that's been used for years by professional interpreters, diplomats, even pilots and flight attendants who need to master a foreign language quickly and accurately for their jobs. But the problem is, most laypeople who hear the term shadowing misunderstand how to use it properly, which is why they never get maximum results, and some even give up because they feel this isn't working. Here's the concept. You listen to one short sentence in the target language, it can be from a movie, podcast, song, YouTube video, or dedicated language learning audio, and you immediately imitate it at nearly the same time as the original audio. Not after the sentence is finished, but simultaneously, like a shadow following someone's movement with almost no delay. That's why this technique is called shadowing, mimicking, like a shadow that always stays attached to its source of light. Why is this so different from just listening or the listening practice that's usually recommended? Because when you only listen without imitating, your brain can get lazy and only catch the general meaning without really processing the sentence structure in detail. It's like watching someone play guitar. You can understand, oh, they're playing the song, but your hands don't automatically know how to play the chords, right? It's the same thing here. But the moment you're forced to imitate in real time, following the exact same rhythm, your brain is forced to process everything at once: sound, rhythm, intonation, sentence structure, and meaning all nearly simultaneously. And this process is exactly what builds procedural knowledge in the brain. Not just declarative knowledge like what you get from flashcard memorization. Research in neurolinguistics shows something interesting. Shadowing activates the motor areas of the brain directly linked to speech production, the same areas active when you're actually speaking, not just the areas linked to passive comprehension. So literally, your brain is learning what it physically feels like to say this sentence, not just what this sentence means when translated. This is really important for you to understand, because this is what sets shadowing apart from other passive methods like just watching a movie while reading subtitles, or just listening to a podcast while lying down without saying anything. Passive methods are great for exposure, but they don't train your actual speaking muscles, neither physically nor neurologically. Now, here's the most important part. The part that makes this an efficient 5-minute trick, instead of the hour-long practice sessions usually recommended in most language tutorials. The 5-minute trick, microloop shadowing in detail. Here's the core of everything, the part you've been waiting for. I need you to pay close attention, because these small details are what will make the difference between actually feeling the effects, or just wasting 5 minutes with no results at all. Step 1, choose one short sentence, not a full episode or a long paragraph. This is the most common mistake I see people make the first time they try shadowing. They immediately grab a 20-minute drama episode and try to shadow it from start to finish all at once. The result? Their brain gets exhausted within minutes, their concentration falls apart, and worst of all, they only manage to repeat each sentence once before moving on to the next one. The right way, and what I recommend. Pick just one sentence, around 5 to 10 words long, from any source you like. It could be your favorite song, a movie dialogue, a podcast clip, or a short video from a native speaker. Focus on just that one sentence. Step 2, loop that sentence 10 times in a row, with no long pauses in between. This is the micro-loop part, the core of the technique's name. You repeat the same sentence, while shadowing it, 10 times in a row, with minimal pause between each repetition. Sounds boring, right? That's exactly where the real power of this technique lies. Intensive repetition in a short window of time is what makes your brain finally lock in that sentence pattern into procedural memory, not just briefly hold it in short-term memory that evaporates within hours. Step 3. Focus on the rhythm and melody of the sentence, not the meaning of each individual word. This is the part most people misunderstand. While shadowing, don't keep stopping to think, what does this word mean? What does that word mean? Focus instead on the music of the sentence, where the stress falls, how the pitch rises and falls, how fast or slow the person is speaking, where they pause briefly to breathe. Word meaning will gradually seep in on its own through repeated context, but it's the rhythm that will make you sound natural and fluent when you actually speak later. People who learn language purely from books often sound stiff and robotic precisely because they never trained this rhythm. They know word meanings, but not the music. Step 4. Tomorrow, take a new sentence, but slip in a review of one sentence from the day before. Every day, you take one new, different sentence. But before starting that new sentence, shadow one sentence from the previous day again, just 2 to 3 repetitions, no need to make it as long as the main session. This is what makes the effect stick long-term. This technique is called spaced retrieval, and when combined with shadowing, the effect multiplies. Without this step, the sentences you've already mastered will slowly evaporate from your memory within weeks. Total time needed for all 4 steps combined? About 5 minutes. No more. Seriously, time yourself, and you'll be surprised how short this process actually is when done with focus. Now, why can this 5-minute method be more effective than memorizing 1,000 words, which takes months or even years? Because every single sentence you shadow already automatically contains vocabulary, grammar structure, and correct pronunciation all in one package in a form that's immediately usable in practice, not just abstract theory sitting and used in your head. Picture this scenario. You shadow one new sentence every day, just 5 minutes each time, for 60 days straight. That means by the end of that period, you have 60 complete sentence patterns truly locked into your brain's automatic reflex level, ready to use anytime without thinking. Compare that to 1,000 isolated, disconnected words that you have to assemble yourself every single time you want to speak, and it's that assembly process that makes you slow, hesitant, and ultimately look nervous in front of people. Why this works scientifically, an in-depth explanation. I don't want you to just take my word for it without a clear basis. So now I want to explain in more depth why microloop shadowing has such a strong scientific foundation, so you'll feel more confident and more motivated to stick with it consistently. First, the process called myelination. Every time your brain sends an electrical signal through the same neural pathway, repeatedly and in close succession, the myelin sheath around that neural pathway gets thicker. This myelin is what allows neural signals to travel much faster and more efficiently, just like an electrical wire coated with quality insulation carries current more stably and quickly. That's why fast, closely spaced repetition, like the 10x loop explained earlier, is far more effective than repetition spread out over time, like once a day for a month. Because the brain needs intensive pressure within a short window of time to trigger significant myelin thickening. Second, muscle memory in our speech organs. Speaking a foreign language isn't just about the brain knowing the words abstractly, it's also about your tongue, lips, jaw, and even throat muscles needing to get used to new movements to produce sounds that may not exist at all in your native language. For example, the th sound in English has no equivalent in many other languages, and requires physical tongue muscle training to pronounce naturally. Shadowing trains these muscles directly and repeatedly, exactly like an athlete practicing a physical movement over and over until it becomes an automatic reflex that no longer needs conscious thought. Picture a basketball player who's practiced free throws thousands of times. They no longer think about throwing angle or hand strength, it's become automatic. Shadowing does the same thing for your speech muscles. Third, contextual encoding, how the brain stores information. When you memorize a word in isolation from context, say, just looking at a card that says apple equals apple, your brain stores that information as an isolated fact, standing alone, with few handles to help you recall it later. This is very easy to forget, because there's only one access path to that memory. But when you shadow a complete sentence, your brain stores the words within it together with the sentence's context, the emotion contained in it, its rhythm, maybe even the image or scene you were watching at the time. This makes the memory far stronger and far easier to recall later, because there are many access paths to it, not just a single fragile pathway. Fourth, and most important, shadowing trains what's called automaticity, the ability to speak without having to think through it step by step. Several second language acquisition researchers, including those studying fluency and automaticity in speech, have found that the more automatic a language process becomes, the more fluent and natural the language that comes out of someone's mouth, regardless of how large their vocabulary is. This means someone with a limited vocabulary but automatic usage can sound far more fluent than someone with a huge vocabulary who still has to think hard every time they want to speak. This also explains why so many people who learn language through natural immersion, for instance, because they moved abroad and were forced to speak daily, often end up more fluent than people who studied formally in a classroom for years, even though their vocabulary might not be as broad. Because they've been unconsciously training this automaticity constantly through repeated real-life interaction. Mistakes that make people fail with this trick. Okay, in this section I want to be completely honest with you, not everyone who tries shadowing gets satisfying results right away. There are several common mistakes I've seen repeatedly, mistakes that make people give up before they ever get to feel this technique's real effect. Let me break them down one by one so you don't fall into the same traps. Mistake number 1: choosing material that's too difficult for your current level. If you force yourself to shadow a sentence full of words you don't understand at all, your brain will be under heavy stress and won't be able to focus on rhythm the way it should. Ideally, pick material you understand around 70 to 80% of. Let the remaining 20 to 30% be gradually taught to you through context and repetition. Mistake number 2: being impatient and expecting instant results. The effect of this technique is cumulative, not instant like magic. On day 1, 2, even 3, you might feel like, nothing's happening, I don't feel anything. This is normal and expected. But usually by the second or third week, you'll suddenly realize sentences are coming out of your mouth on their own without needing to think first. People who give up on day 3 because they feel this isn't working will never reach that point, and that's a real shame. Mistake number 3: only listening in your head, not actually speaking out loud and clearly. This is absolutely crucial, and often overlooked. Many people shadow only silently in their minds, or mumble quietly, half embarrassed. But the most important part of this technique lies precisely in the physical movement of the mouth and clear, loud sound production. If you only listen without actually speaking out loud, that's not shadowing, that's just regular listening practice, which is far weaker for building automaticity. Mistake number 4: switching sentences every day without ever reviewing. Without spaced retrieval, occasionally repeating old sentences in later sessions, new sentences you learn will keep piling up, but quickly disappear from memory within days. This small, consistent review is what makes the effect last long-term, rather than being fleeting. Mistake number 5: expecting this technique to be a total replacement for every other learning method. Shadowing is genuinely powerful, but it doesn't mean it's the only thing you need to become fully fluent. You still need other exposure like reading, watching content in the target language, and most importantly, actually talking with other people. Think of shadowing as an accelerator and foundation, not a total replacement for your entire language learning journey. Mistake number 6: being too perfectionist about pronunciation early on. Some people stop shadowing because they feel their pronunciation is still far from perfect and end up feeling discouraged. But at the early stage, what matters isn't perfection, it's the consistency of trying. Pronunciation that gets closer to native-like will form gradually over time, not instantly perfect on the first attempt. Real examples in case studies. Now I want to give you a more concrete picture of how this technique actually works in the real world, so it's not just abstract theories sitting in your head. There are many polyglots and self-taught language learners who've shared similar experiences across various online language learning communities. They started from absolute zero, shadowing just 5 to 10 minutes a day consistently, and within 2 to 3 months, they were already chatting at a basic level fairly naturally, much faster than their peers who relied solely on flashcard apps to cram as much vocabulary as possible. There's an interesting pattern that keeps showing up in these stories, which I've summarized into a general timeline. In weeks 1 to 2, most people feel their progress is slow, stiff, and they often find themselves wondering, is this actually working? This doubt is completely normal, and almost everyone who succeeds with this technique goes through this phase. In weeks 3 to 4, an aha moment usually starts to emerge. They feel some sentences coming out automatically without needing to think about word order first. This is an important turning point that dramatically boosts their motivation. By month 2, they start being able to connect the sentence patterns they've mastered into new sentences they've never shadowed before. This is a sign their brain has started to generalize the language pattern, not just imitate it word for word. By month 3 and beyond, most are fluent enough to chat about everyday topics, even though their vocabulary isn't as broad as someone who studied formally in a classroom or course for years. Compare this pattern to someone who relies solely on memorizing vocabulary. They might know thousands of word meanings very well, but the moment they're asked to actually chat, they still struggle badly to construct sentences in real time, because the words they've mastered are only stored as information, not trained as an active, ready-to-use skill. The most striking difference these people describe is in their sense of confidence while talking. People who shadow regularly tend to feel far more confident speaking even with a smaller vocabulary, because the sentences they've mastered are already automatic and reflexive, requiring no lengthy thought process. Meanwhile, people who only memorize words often feel anxious and worried constantly, because they have to assemble sentences from scratch every time they want to speak, and that assembly process takes time that makes them look hesitant in front of whoever they're talking to. I myself, after discovering this technique, tried applying it to a different language than the one I'd learned before, as a kind of experiment to prove to myself this wasn't just a coincidence. I picked one simple greeting sentence on day 1, looped it 10 times, and honestly, that first day felt pretty ordinary, even a bit awkward because I was talking to myself alone in my room while mimicking the audio. But I forced myself to stay consistent, even if just for 5 minutes, every single day, with no excuse to skip. Around the second week, I started noticing something strange. While driving and hearing a song in the same language on the radio, my mouth reflexively started mumbling along with certain phrases whose structure turned out to be similar to sentences I'd already shadowed before. That was a small moment that gave me chills, because I realized my brain was starting to recognize patterns without me consciously telling it to. By week 4, I tested myself with a short video call with someone I met on a language exchange app. And while I clearly still made plenty of mistakes as a beginner, I could feel a significant difference compared to my earlier attempts when I only relied on memorized vocabulary. Basic sentences came out faster, my thinking pauses were shorter, and most importantly, I no longer felt totally panicked like before. Why such a small technique is often underestimated. Interestingly, one reason this simple technique isn't discussed more widely is because psychologically, humans tend to assume that something requiring big effort must produce bigger results. This is related to a bias connecting effort and perceived value. We tend to underestimate solutions that seem too simple or too short, even when they're scientifically proven to be more effective than methods that take hours. Yet if you look at other fields outside of language learning, the same principle applies. Elite athletes often practice the same basic movement repeatedly in short, intensive bursts, rather than long, unfocused, random practice sessions. Professional musicians often practice one small section of a song over and over until it's perfect, rather than playing the entire song start to finish every single practice session. This principle of intensive repetition in short durations turns out to apply universally across many skill domains, including language. How to choose the right material for shadowing. This is a part often overlooked but actually really important. The quality and type of material you choose to shadow will greatly determine how fast your progress will be. Good sources to use. Dialogue from TV series or movies with natural, everyday conversational settings, not formal or poetic dialogue. Podcasts specifically designed for language learners, since they're usually spoken more slowly and clearly compared to native speaker conversations that move very fast. Songs with clear lyrics that aren't overly poetic or convoluted in meaning. Short videos of native speakers talking casually, like daily vlogs or casual everyday content. What to avoid, especially early on. Formal news broadcasts with overly rigid language and technical terms rarely used in everyday conversation. Poetry or song lyrics with complex figurative language full of metaphors that are hard to understand even for native speakers. Material with very heavy or uncommon accents, until you already have a strong enough foundation to handle that kind of accent variation. One important extra tip: look for sentences with a structure that can be reused in many different situations. Sentences like, "Could you please tell me where," "I'd like to know more about," or "in my opinion." These are sentence patterns you'll use very often across many real-life conversational contexts. Prioritize sentences like these over ones that are extremely specific to one particular situation and rarely get reused. Sentences with this kind of flexible structure are what I call frame sentences, a frame you can fill in with different words as needed, while the underlying structure stays the same and becomes automatic in your brain. Advanced variations, leveling up from the basic technique. Here's what I promised at the start of the video: advanced variations that make this trick even more powerful, for those of you who are already comfortable with the basic technique and want to level up. Variation 1: Shadowing with emotional variation. Once you can imitate one sentence accurately and smoothly, try repeating the exact same sentence but with different emotions. Try an angry tone, then a happy tone, then a confused tone, and finally a sad tone. This trains your brain to be flexible in using the same sentence pattern across different tones and emotional contexts, exactly like how language is actually used in real everyday life. Variation 2: Word substitution within the sentence. Once the original sentence is completely smooth in your mouth, try swapping out one or two words in that sentence with other words you already know, while keeping the structure and rhythm exactly the same. For example, from "I want to eat fried rice" you could change it to "I want to eat noodles" or "I want to drink coffee." This teaches your brain to generalize the sentence pattern, rather than just rigidly memorizing a single sentence. Variation 3: Paired shadowing, if you have a study partner. If you happen to have a friend learning the same language, try doing shadowing alternately. One person speaks the original sentence live, the other shadows it in real time. This adds a light layer of social pressure that makes the practice closer to an actual conversation situation, rather than just practicing alone in your room. Variation 4: Record your own voice and compare it to the original. Try recording your own voice while shadowing, then listen to it and compare it against the original audio. This gives you clear, objective feedback on exactly which parts of your pronunciation are still far from the original, so you can focus on fixing those specific parts in your next sessions. Variation 5: Shadowing at varying speeds. Try shadowing the same sentence at a slower speed than normal first, to make sure your articulation is clear, then try it at normal speed, and once you're comfortable, try it faster than the original. This speed variation practice makes your speech muscles more flexible and ready to handle different people's differing speaking speeds. Combining these various variations is what makes your learning progress accelerate even more, because you're not just imitating a single sentence mechanically, but starting to understand and master the full flexibility of the language pattern you're learning. Troubleshooting when it feels like it's not working. It's completely normal that at some point in your journey, you'll feel like there's no progress at all. Here are some concrete solutions for the most common problems that cause people to get frustrated. I've been shadowing for 2 weeks, but it still feels really stiff. Check yourself again. Are you actually speaking loudly and clearly, or are you actually just mumbling quietly, half embarrassed? Try significantly raising your speaking volume during practice. Many people don't realize they're actually shadowing too quietly, which makes the effect far less than maximal. I easily forget sentences I learned last week. This likely means you're skipping the review or spaced retrieval step explained earlier. Don't be lazy about slipping in 2 to 3 old sentences into every new session, even though the process only takes a moment. I'm really bored having to repeat the same sentence up to 10 times. This is a normal feeling that anyone can experience. But try changing your approach. For example, change the speaking speed to be faster or slower than usual, or use the emotional variation technique explained earlier so the process doesn't feel monotonous and boring. I don't know what kind of sentence to start with. Try starting with the most basic sentences most commonly used in everyday life. Simple greetings, how to ask how someone's doing, how to ask for directions, or how to talk about food. These are the foundations most frequently used across many situations, so they're very worth mastering and reinforcing first. I'm already very smooth at shadowing, but I'm still nervous when actually talking to people. This is completely normal. Shadowing builds an automatic foundation at the language level, but you still need actual talking mileage to eliminate social and psychological nervousness. Think of shadowing as regular gym training, while actually talking to people is the real match. You still have to step into that match to truly feel comfortable and used to it. Frequently asked questions, FAQ. Before moving to the long-term results section, I want to answer a few questions that come up all the time in the comments whenever I discuss a topic like this. Chances are, some of these questions are also on your mind right now. Can this technique be used for any language, or only certain ones? This shadowing technique is universal, meaning it can be applied to any language in the world. Whether it's English, Mandarin, Japanese, Korean, Arabic, Spanish, French, or even regional/local languages. The basic principle is the same. The human brain learns language patterns through repetition and context, regardless of which language is being learned. What differs might just be the difficulty level of adjusting pronunciation, depending on how far the target language is from your native language. Do I need to understand the grammar first before starting shadowing? Not necessarily. In fact, one of shadowing's biggest advantages is that you can start from zero with no formal grammar knowledge at all. Grammar will be absorbed naturally through repeated sentence patterns, similar to how young children learn without ever studying grammar theory. But if you already have a grammar foundation, that can also help speed up your understanding of the sentence you're shadowing. I'm already in my 30s, is this still effective for adults? Very effective. It's true that some research shows children have a certain advantage in brain plasticity for language, especially for near-perfect accent pronunciation. But adults actually have other advantages that children don't have: metacognitive ability, self-discipline, and the ability to consciously understand patterns. Many adults have achieved high fluency through consistent methods like this shadowing technique, regardless of the age at which they started learning. What's the ideal length for each sentence being shadowed? Ideally between 5 to 10 words per sentence, or an audio duration of around 3 to 8 seconds. If the sentence is too long, the brain will struggle to process everything at once in a single repetition round, which can reduce the effectiveness of the practice. Is it okay to shadow for more than 5 minutes if I have extra time? Absolutely, and it can even speed up results if done properly. The 5-minute figure here is the minimum needed so this technique can still be consistently maintained by anyone, even people with the busiest schedules. If you have more time, feel free to add more, but don't force a long duration early on to the point it exhausts you and makes you stop altogether. What should I do if I don't have a native speaker to practice actually talking with? This isn't a major problem at the early stage. Shadowing itself already builds a strong automatic foundation. Once you feel confident enough, there are plenty of online language exchange apps that can connect you with native speakers for free, who are also learning your native language as a foreign language themselves. This becomes a mutually beneficial exchange for both parties. Why most language apps don't teach this? This is a question that might be on your mind. If this technique is this easy and this effective, why don't nearly all popular language learning apps focus on teaching it directly? The answer is fairly simple and a bit disappointing. Those apps are designed to keep you engaged inside them for as long as possible, collecting points, completing level after level, and feeling productive through addictive gamification systems. Something like vocabulary memorization is much easier to turn into quizzes, points, and achievement badges compared to shadowing practice, which is more personal and harder to measure automatically through an algorithm. On top of that, many people are psychologically more comfortable with passive activities like matching a word to a picture or choosing from multiple choice answers, compared to activities that require them to speak out loud and feel a bit weird or uncomfortable at first. Yet it's precisely that small discomfort that signals the brain is genuinely working hard to build a new skill. This doesn't mean those apps are entirely useless. Apps can still be a great source of material to use for shadowing, and can help build basic vocabulary knowledge as a complement. But don't make those apps your only learning method, especially if your main goal is to be able to speak fluently and confidently. Building a routine that lasts. One last thing I want to emphasize before moving into the long-term results section is about building a routine that genuinely lasts, rather than just a burst of initial enthusiasm that quickly fizzles out. Try attaching this 5-minute shadowing session to a habit you already have in your daily routine. For example, do it right after brushing your teeth in the morning, or right before going to sleep at night. Attaching a new habit to an existing, already automatic habit makes the new habit far easier to sustain long-term. Also, don't be too hard on yourself if one day you forget or miss a session. What matters is picking back up the next day, not giving up entirely because you feel you've failed to maintain consistency. Progress in language learning is like climbing a staircase, not a perfectly straight line with no obstacles at all. How to measure progress without becoming obsessed with numbers. One of the biggest challenges when learning with a technique that isn't number-based like flashcards is that it becomes hard to know whether you're truly making progress or just standing still. There's no green progress bar you can check every day. So let me give you a few simple ways to measure your progress without depending on an app or on statistics that can often be misleading. Method 1: record yourself every 2 weeks. Take a sentence you've never heard before. Try reading or saying it spontaneously, then record it. Save that recording. 2 weeks later, do the same thing with a different sentence, then compare the two recordings. Usually you'll be surprised yourself hearing how much your fluency and vocal confidence have changed, even though the change feels imperceptible day by day. Method 2: pay attention to the pause before you start speaking. Early in learning, there's usually a long pause between hearing a question and starting to answer, because the brain is still busy assembling the sentence. Over time, this pause will get shorter without you even noticing. Check on this every few weeks as an indicator of your automaticity progress. Method 3: try talking to yourself in front of a mirror. Sounds strange, but this is a technique used by many experienced language learners. Try describing your day in the target language for a full minute without stopping, in front of a mirror. Notice how often you stumble, how often you have to stop to search for a word. Do this occasionally as an overall benchmark of your progress. Method 4: don't compare yourself to other people. This is really important. Everyone has a different starting point, different amounts of free time, and a different native language that affects how quickly they can master the target language. Compare yourself today to yourself a month ago, not to other people whose progress might look faster on social media. Long-term results, what you can expect. If you consistently run this micro-loop shadowing every day for 5 minutes, without breaking the streak, here's a realistic picture of the progress you can expect over time. In the first month, you'll start feeling a few basic sentences come out automatically from your mouth without needing to think first. Your pronunciation will also start sounding much more natural, no longer stiff like you're reading straight from a textbook. In months 2 to 3, you'll start being able to combine the sentence patterns you've mastered into new sentences you've never specifically learned before. This is a crucial point where your brain starts generalizing language patterns, not just imitating, but starting to create using patterns already firmly embedded in your head. By month 4 onward, most people are generally confident enough to chat about everyday topics fairly fluently, even though their vocabulary might not be as broad as someone who's studied formally for years. But the most significant difference is, you can use what you know in real time and spontaneously, rather than just knowing it in your head without being able to put it into practice. The most important thing to remember is that a 5-minute daily effort is far easier to sustain long-term compared to a target of memorizing 50 words a day, which tends to cause mental burnout and eventually leads people to stop halfway. Small consistency that can be sustained over a long time will always beat a big effort that only lasts a week before being abandoned. Key summary before the closing. Before moving to the closing, let me give you a quick summary of the most crucial points to remember from this video, so you can start tonight without needing to re-watch from the beginning. Remember clearly, the main goal of this technique is to build what's called automaticity, not just to increase the number of vocabulary words you passively know. Focused, consistent practice quality is far more valuable than quantity of material learned quickly and carelessly. Never underestimate the power of intensive repetition in a short window of time. 10 repetitions in a row for one sentence is far more effective than 1 repetition each for 10 different sentences. And above all, never forget the importance of daily consistency, even if it's just 5 minutes. Small progress done consistently every day will, over the long run, produce far greater achievement than a big effort only done occasionally. Recap and closing. Okay, let's summarize everything thoroughly before we wrap up this video. Memorizing 1,000 words isn't the right solution for building fluency, because it only builds declarative knowledge stored in your head but slow to recall when needed. What truly makes you fluent in speaking is procedural knowledge, automatic, reflexive ability that can only be built through the right, well-directed practice. The trick is micro-loop shadowing. Pick one short sentence, repeat it 10 times while imitating its rhythm and pronunciation exactly, focus your attention on the sentence's music rather than just its word meanings, and slip in a review of an old sentence every day. This entire process only requires 5 minutes a day. Avoid the common mistakes explained earlier. Don't choose material that's too difficult, don't just mumble quietly without a clear voice, don't forget to review regularly, and don't expect this technique to be a total replacement for every other learning method out there. If you want to level up further, try applying advanced variations like changing emotion and pronunciation, doing word substitution, paired shadowing with a study partner, or recording and comparing your own voice with the original audio. And above all, always remember: small consistency that lasts will always beat a big effort that doesn't last. 5 minutes every day, done continuously, will give you far greater results than hours-long study sessions only done occasionally. Before you close out this video, I want to give you a small challenge. Tonight, before you go to sleep, find one short sentence in the language you're learning. It could be from your favorite song, a movie clip, or any short video. Loop that sentence 10 times while speaking clearly and loudly. That's it. No special tools needed, no app subscriptions required, just a 5-minute commitment and the courage to sound a little weird while practicing alone. Remember, The people who eventually become truly fluent in a foreign language aren't the most talented ones or the ones who memorized the most vocabulary. They're the ones who consistently did one small, correct thing, day after day, without stopping, until that small thing accumulated into a major ability they didn't even realize had formed. If this video was helpful, please share it with your friends who are struggling to learn a foreign language, so they can also stop wasting time memorizing words that never actually get used in real conversation. And if you'd like, write in the comments what language you're currently learning, how far along your progress is, and what sentence you're going to pick to shadow tonight. I'm curious to hear about everyone's progress and choices. See you in the next video.